Here's the bottom line when it comes to belief systems, folks. As difficult even as it may be for some people in this room even to get this concept, no one has the right to believe that people are property. In addition to that, no one has the right to believe that slavery is legitimate for anyone. And now I'm going to take it a step further. Really pay attention to this one, because here's where people are really in wrong belief who are refusing to get this message and wake up. No one has the right to believe that slavery is legitimate for anyone, including themselves. This is a big thing you hear even in the freedom movement. Well, if other people want to be slaves, that's their right. No, it's not. No, it's not. No one has the right to believe that they are rightful slaves. Do you want to know why? That belief perpetuates the belief in the legitimacy of slavery, which is also not a right. You don't have a right to believe that you're the legitimate slave of another being. There is no such right in nature. Never has been. We have to abandon this erroneous notion that somehow government is legitimate and a ruling class and a slave class is legitimate through the idea of authority, this erroneous notion. And I think Samuel Adams, again, who is my heart and soul of a dissident, Samuel Adams, who rode on horseback from Boston to Philadelphia to speak at the Pennsylvania State House and urge for a physical rebellion against the tyranny of the crown. Without that man doing that, the American Revolution may have never happened. And I'll tell you something, it's probably the closest thing to a divinely inspired holy act that has ever taken place on this planet. And the people who don't understand what happened in the American Revolution, I feel sorry for them for believing in revisionist history, which I'm going to talk about. Because we need to understand what exactly happened here in the Revolutionary War era period and understand the type of blood sacrifice that, thank God, the men who were willing to give that blood conducted. Because they made it possible for someone like me to stand here and speak these words today. We would be bending over and kissing the ass of a king or queen. And most of us still are, except it's called government now. Well, let me tell you something. Without those men, these ideas wouldn't have propagated in this land to the extent that they did. We owe them a debt. I know the significance of their actions, of their minds and of their actions, because I've read their philosophy, which most people have never done. Samuel Adams, the chief conspirator of the American Revolution, said, "It is the greatest absurdity to suppose it in the power of one or any number of men to renounce their essential natural rights or the means of preserving those rights," which we're going to talk about a little bit later. If men, through fear, fraud, or mistake, should in terms renounce or give up an essential natural right, the eternal law of reason and the grand end of society would absolutely vacate such renunciation. He is saying here, you don't have a right to give up your rights because that puts everybody else in jeopardy of slavery. You have no right not to understand what a right is. You have a right to not understand how to bake an apple pie, but you don't have a right to not understand what a right is. This is something that is a duty to understand. It transcends a right. You must understand it because the ignorance of its understanding places other beings in jeopardy of slavery. And he's saying if somebody says I'm the rightful slave of another, the society itself simply vacates that abdication of a right and says, no, you do not have a right to abdicate that. It's not only a right, it's a duty and a responsibility that you can never shirk actually in nature. You can only make the claim that you're going to shirk it, but you can't really do that. Continuing with this quote, he said, "The right of freedom being the gift of God Almighty, it is not in the power of man to alienate this gift and voluntarily become a slave." That's why they don't want people reading the Founding Fathers' writings. They might get some crazy ideas that they're free and not owned by others and don't have a right to renounce their freedom. That wild idea might break out and freedom along with it. Yeah, they don't want you reading these men's writings. Certainly not. That's why they're going to pull them from school, and that's why they're going to propagate these Marxists, these neo-Marxists, and these absolutely outright communist ideas that somehow these were evil men. And the people who buy into this psyop don't know their history at all. At all. Contrary to popular disinformation and widely held but erroneous belief, as human beings, we do not possess the right to be apathetic about whatever we want. This notion that I don't care whether we are enslaved is also not a right. You have a right not to care whatever popular celebrity of the day, what fashion they happen to be wearing, because I certainly don't care about those things, and that's my right not to care about them. I personally don't care about what's happening in popular sports or popular music. Couldn't give a damn, couldn't care less. I don't have the right not to care about the dynamics that govern human freedom. I don't have that right. Why? Because refusing to understand it is putting other beings in jeopardy of slavery. There is no such right not to understand our right to say, we don't care. I don't care what a right is. I don't care whether society is enslaved. My own grandmother on my father's side of the family looked at me in the face one day and said, I know that we're all enslaved and I don't care. I'm like, you have to be kidding me. I said, how many children do you have? 2. How many grandchildren do you have? 2. How many great-grandchildren do you have? 1. So you have 2 children, 2 grandchildren, and a great-grandchild, and you don't care whether the world is enslaved? And you think that's your right not to care? I mean, you have to be kidding me that the people like this exist within our own families. No one has the right to not care that slavery is continuing and that freedom is being destroyed. This is not a right that exists in nature. Again, you have a right not to care about any frivolous thing that you don't want to care about, but you don't have a right not to care about rights and freedom. It's a duty and a responsibility that you can never shirk in nature.